Hi everybody, welcome to this video where I want to show you the functionality of the new study and learn tool in ChatGPT. So ChatGPT launched this new tool which is really focused on educators and students to help them integrating ChatGPT in education. And what I will do in the video is first briefly explain kind of the underlying logic of this tool, and then I will show you 3 specific use cases that in my experience are really helpful to apply this particular tool. So first, let me briefly explain what this study and learn tool is exactly about. So when we normally use ChatGPT, what we will do is we will write a user prompt. Yeah? So we give input to ChatGPT by writing a prompt, and subsequently ChatGPT gives us output, gives us a response. And that can be very helpful often, but in an educational context, it's also a bit problematic because often the underlying process of transforming the input into output is lacking. And I've experienced that myself when I teach my entrepreneurship courses. Of course, today students can use ChatGPT to come up with interesting business model, to develop hypotheses, but then the underlying process often is lacking, and this is actually hampering the learning experience. And the great thing of this new study and learn tool is that it actually shifts attention from producing outputs to actually the process. So this is a tool, if you enable it, that is kind of pushed to focus on the process of transforming input in output instead of immediately generating output itself. And in that way, I think this tool is actually very relevant for educational purposes. So let me now show you a number of use cases that I have started developing with this particular tool. So here I am in my ChatGPT environment. I have the educational license where now this study and learn tool is integrated. So let me show you how we can use it for the first use case, namely to brainstorm on, for instance, pain points. Yeah? So I'm an entrepreneurship professor where as a starting point, students have to kind of brainstorm of pain points that they could explore. And so let me show you how you can do that with the study and learn approach. So I will write a very straightforward prompt now. So I can say, as a student, I want to brainstorm on a pain point for a startup. If I now would just press enter, it will immediately generate for me pain points, or it has the tendency to do that. However, if I now press here on plus, I can enable the study and learn method. And this will actually push it to focus on the process instead of the output. So let us see now what happens. So we can now press enter. And you see it now will actually start asking follow-up questions. So now I can actually engage in a process of brainstorming. And now I can kind of answer these questions and start engaging in a brainstorm. And then step by step, it will kind of allow me to brainstorm. Now, one thing that I noticed is that with this simple prompt, it will kind of, the brainstorming will remain a bit superficial and not really guided. So what I tend to do is actually, and let me show you that in a new chat. So I will open a new chat. I will use the same prompt. I will enable study and learn. But now actually I will provide additional knowledge. Yeah, so of course, I as a professor, I have files, knowledge, PDFs about how to do a good brainstorm. And now I can feed that knowledge into the prompt. Yeah? So let me do that briefly. So I will now add a PDF. And more specifically here, I have a deep research report on best practices for ideation. So I will use that particular file. So let me briefly check it now. So I've now uploaded a deep research report with best practices on brainstorming for pain points. And if we now press enter, you will see that it again asks me some questions. And now let me briefly do it so that you can see how it then will enable my document. So it now asks me some questions that I can answer here in writing. Now I actually always then use here the dictaphone because that's more convenient. So now I will dictate my answers to these questions. I'm not focused on a particular industry or user. The general theme that I have in mind is sustainability. I want to generate indeed a tech-driven idea. So these are the answers that are now recorded, so then I don't have to write them. I can now press enter. And now you see that immediately, based actually on the document that I have provided, it has enabled a specific framework, namely the PAIN framework, to guide me through an ideation session. And so now I can actually go through the ideation session step by step with this tool. And I hope you already see that this is really focused on creating a process and not on an output. So I think this is a first use case where this study and learn tool can be very valuable. So now let us move to a second use case where I will show you how you can use this tool so that students can really enable it as a coach. So here I'm in my empty ChatGPT. So now if I want to enable this study and learn approach, I need to click on study and learn. And now if I want to use ChatGPT as a coach, I have a very simple kind of prompt. I want to study the attached slides. Can you mentor me? And so now I can actually feed it slides. So let me briefly show you the slides that I have here. So these are slides from my entrepreneurship course where students will have to learn about the human side of entrepreneurship and the financial side. Yeah, so it's about how to create an optimal founder team. What about equity splits? What kind of investments can you do? Angel investments, VC investments. So that's the content that I explain in these slides. And so now actually we will use ChatGPT to mentor students in studying these slides. So this is the straightforward prompt that I prepared. And now, of course, I need to attach my slides so that it has the slides in its knowledge base. So let me briefly do that. So now the slides are uploaded into my prompt, and now I can press enter. And you see it's now indeed reading the documents. And now it will ask me again some follow-up questions. Yeah? So what is the goal of studying these slides? How comfortable are you? So now it wants to tailor a study plan for me. Yeah? So let me see here. It already gives kind of also an overview. And so here it's asking, should I use questions, small exercises, and reflection prompts? And so now I can really ask a follow-up question. And for instance, now one of the concepts in the slides is about equity splits. So now I can ask to give me a better understanding of this concept. Hi, can you help me to get a better understanding of the concept of equity splits according to the slides? So now we can record the prompts and press enter. And now you see it's already kind of guiding me to the process. And so it's saying, let's quickly check your current understanding before I explain. What do you think equity split means? And so on. So now I can say, I think equity split means how founders split the equity. So now I press enter. And we can see what it now will give me as a follow-up. Yes. And now it asks me follow-up question. When should you split the equity? How should you split the equity? And it gives me here kind of inputs. And then you see it will ask me a follow-up question. So here it really tries to kind of step by step, let me go through the content. And because I know the slides, actually this is really the content of the slide. So it's typically will not go outside of the content. It really now uses the slides as the knowledge base, and students can step by step go through the content in this way. So this is kind of a nice way to do it. Of course, instead of focusing on writing, I can also launch now the voice mode, and then I can really start talking with it. Yeah? So we can briefly do that. Hi, can you help me going through the content?
Of course. Let's dive into the content step by step. Since we were talking about Equity splits. Let's keep going with that for now. If you ever want to switch topics or explore another part of the slides, just let me know. So we were discussing why some founders might prefer a static equity split. Do you have any thoughts on that? If not, I can give you a few reasons to consider.
Could you maybe explain me what a static equity split means?
Sure. A static equity split means that the founders decide on how to divide the ownership of the company at the very beginning, and that division stays the same over time. This approach is usually simpler because you lock in the percentages once.
Yeah, so I hope you see that in that way you can actually easily communicate now in an educational way, so then it almost really becomes your personal tutor. So I think this is a very nice second use case. So now let me move to the third use case, where we can use ChatGPT and the study and learn tool to really start testing your knowledge like you would test it on an exam. So now I'm again into the ChatGPT mode, and let me show you how we can use the study and learn tool to prepare for exams. And I have again quite a straightforward prompt. So I ask, can you create a mock exam to test my knowledge of the attached content? So now I will give as content a slide deck about the data side of entrepreneurship. So this is one of the modules in my entrepreneurship course. So this is a module about what kind of metrics should startups consider when they engage in entrepreneurship, about the importance of testing hypotheses and how hypotheses could be tested. So that's the content. And so imagine that students want to prepare for the exam where they have to reproduce this content. So now I can create a simple prompt. Can you create a mock exam to test my knowledge of the attached content? And now I have to, of course, attach the file. So let me briefly do that. So now my file is attached, and of course I need to enable the study and learn tool, and now we can start. And indeed you can see that it has understood the content of the slides, and now here is a kind of mock exam created. So it has created some multiple choice questions to test some core concepts and principles. It has created some short answer questions, and it has kind of created some application questions, where actually students have to apply the content on kind of mini cases. And actually, looking at these questions, they all make a lot of sense. They are really based on what I have provided in the slides. And here we even have some scenario-based questions. And then you can see, let us start with a warm-up. Can you explain in your own words? And so then the student will be pushed to start answering questions. Now I can now also ask, can you create a report with answers to the questions? And we can press enter. And then you see actually that it is kind of pushing you not to immediately get the answers, but rather really go through the process. So that again shows the strength of this tool, that when students will be eager to immediately get the answers, actually this tool pushes them to just go through it step by step. Of course, they could do that then in normal ChatGPT, so you always have to be aware of that in the end it will be possible for them to get the answers, but at least in this particular mode, the focus will be on the process and not on the output. So I think that's really the strength of this particular tool. Okay, so these were just kind of 3 use cases to show you what is possible with this study and learn tool. I hope that can give you inspiration to start using this tool in your own education. And thanks for your attention. Bye.